Grace Kelly spent her life with a camera pointed at her face, yet one of the wildest parts of her story sits far behind the spotlight. She is almost always pictured as pure glamour, a Hollywood figure wrapped in a polished Irish image that audiences loved to repeat. But before she ever became a household name, studios and publicists were already actively shaping a life story that the film industry liked to keep neat and easily digestible. They heavily pushed an image of Irish Catholic royalty, deliberately tying her public persona to her father, John B. Kelly Sr., and his highly prominent Philadelphia Irish heritage. This angle perfectly fit the era's deep hunger for a wholesome all-American heroine. Following the exhaustion of 2 world wars, audiences wanted comfort, and Grace offered a narrative that felt safe, clean, and almost fairy tale perfect. Hollywood leaned into her County Mayo connection through her paternal grandparents, emphasizing a faith-filled and poised demeanor that played beautifully as a modern Cinderella tale. While the media machines amplified this bright and simple story, a massive German-American family line sat quietly in the background, left deliberately on the cutting room floor. Grace's mother, Margaret Major, was not Irish in any way. She was born in 1899 in Philadelphia to German-American parents named Karl Major and Mary Berg. Her father originally came from Berg bei Heilbronn, located near Stuttgart, and her mother hailed from Eberbach. Margaret did not grow up in a castle. She lived her entire life as a United States resident, working diligently as a physical trainer. She only became a devout Catholic convert when she married into the Kelly clan in 1924, in the years immediately following World War II, claiming a German heritage still carried a heavy shadow in the public imagination. Lingering anti-German sentiment across America made it much easier and far safer for the press to frame Grace strictly as Irish Catholic. The complex reality of her mother's deep Protestant German roots was quickly pushed aside because it simply did not fit the wholesome mood of the time. Even the family name sparked rumors that refused to die decades later. People constantly look at the surname Major and assume it was originally Mayer, altered to sound more American or smoothed out by Hollywood publicists trying to hide her background. Mayer is indeed a very common phonetic spelling found in United States records for completely unrelated German families. Yet the actual genealogical records reveal a stubborn, quiet truth. Grace's maternal line kept the spelling Major consistently from Karl, who was born in 1868, all the way through Margaret Catherine Major. The family never underwent a deliberate switch upon their arrival in America. The name simply stayed put, holding its original shape while outsiders continually tried to rewrite it or correct it. While the world focused entirely on the simple Philadelphia Catholic girl narrative, dedicated researchers were quietly tracing Margaret Mayer's bloodline back in time. In the 1970s, a Belgian genealogist named José Verhecke built an immense 21-generation family chart, formerly known as an Ahnentafel, to document this specific ancestry. He did not rely on loose family gossip or simple internet searches. He meticulously used church books, civic archives, and academic publications originating directly from the Württemberg region. Verhecke drew heavily from German journals like Genealogical, published between 1964 and 1976, to track the names backward. Experts like H.W. Ebenau and Ernst Löslein then cross-verified the entire chain, ensuring the links were rock solid. This detailed reconstruction of the patrilineal German ancestry revealed a stunning upward climb that completely contradicted the royal fairy tale. The documented chain begins with tradesmen, specifically barbers, living in Oberurbach in the 1650s. a barber in that era was not just someone who cut hair. It was an established trade deeply embedded inside the daily life of a town. From those working-class hands, the family steadily rose into positions of immense local trust and pressure. They built a noble artisan chain, which meant the line included both skilled tradespeople and people with higher social roles. Generation by generation, they produced Schorndorf mayors and civic officials closely connected to Tübingen. These roles required them to make hard decisions while being constantly watched by the public, fighting to maintain their earned status. The line eventually reached a formidable figure named Johann Christian von Meyer, born in 1741. He was a highly respected jurist-theologian who worked intensely in the complex worlds of law and religion. His reputation for leadership was so undeniable that he was elected rector of Tübingen University 5 separate times, taking the seat in 1786, 1792, 1801, 1807, and finally in 1813. Primary documents confirm the bridge from Johann Christian von Meyer through his son Gustav, born in 1793, down through Elfriede Dade's line, and finally to the later Meyers who crossed the ocean and settled in Philadelphia. The chart places this impressive professor securely as ancestor number 48 in Grace Kelly's table. But the researchers did not stop with university rectors. They kept reaching backward, pushing past the 1500s into a much older world of medieval knights and castle lords inside the Holy Roman Empire. Deep inside this incredibly long list, sitting around generation 15 or 16, a single name appears that acts like a sharp hinge in history: Conrad Schenk von Stauffenberg, who died in 1361. This specific ancestor ties Margaret Meyer's bloodline directly into the noble Schenk von Stauffenberg family, a Catholic aristocracy that persisted through centuries of political turmoil in Bavaria and Swabia. The records display a complex, interconnected web of lesser nobles, including the von Plieningen, von Münchingen, and von O families. These groups constantly intermarried to maintain their land, consolidate their duty, and guarantee their survival against rival branches. A single detail, like a Schenk von Stauffenberg dying in 1361 and connecting to von Plieningen lines, pins the entire network to a real point in time. Connecting Grace Kelly to the Stauffenberg name violently shatters the carefully polished Hollywood illusion. The Stauffenberg family is linked to one of the most famous, desperate, and deadly acts of anti-Nazi resistance in modern history. Klaus Schenk Graf von Stauffenberg was the German colonel who actively planted a bomb in the failed July 20th, 1944 assassination attempt on Adolf Hitler. Acting against the deadly Nazi system carried the ultimate risk, and the failure of this plot triggered a catastrophic consequence for his entire bloodline. The Nazis did not just execute Klaus, they immediately weaponized an ancient doctrine called Sippenhaft, which demanded total collective family punishment. Under this brutal rule, if one man betrayed the state, the entire extended family shared his guilt and instantly became hostages. Klaus was executed that very evening at the Bendler block. His brother, Berthold, faced horrific torture and a brutal show trial managed by Roland Freisler. The regime then slowly hanged Berthold twice, just for Hitler's viewing pleasure. The terror immediately invaded their homes. Klaus's wife, Nina, was arrested while pregnant and forced to give birth to their daughter Constanza inside a prison cell. The extreme cruelty extended directly to the children. 5 of Klaus's young children were completely stripped of their famous last name and legally renamed Meister, a deliberate attempt by the state to erase their identity, as if they could destroy a family by changing a word. The Nazi government confiscated all of the family's property, taking away their stability and everything that made them a home, and sent the renamed children to an orphanage located in Bad Sachse. In February, 1945, as the war neared its chaotic and fiery end, the children were moved again, this time thrust into an isolation barrack at the Buchenwald concentration camp alongside other relatives. An isolation barrack was designed to separate and control people, proving the Nazis still feared the family. They endured frightening, desperate evacuations connected to Dachau before finally reaching a moment of survival. United States forces officially liberated the family in South Tyrol on May 4, 1945. Even after surviving this unimaginable ordeal, the Stauffenberg relatives lived with intense stigma in the post-war years, constantly judged by those around them. Grace Kelly never had to live through that paralyzing terror, but her family tree contains the exact same Swabian noble roots. She carried a direct, documented link to the very Catholic aristocratic clan that endured this horrific modern survival story. It creates a jarring, almost unbelievable collision between the sparkling ball gowns of Monaco and this dark, deadly reality of 20th century political violence. The same as ancestry that sounds like a beautiful fairy tale of ancient knights was actually soaked in the brutal consequences of resisting a dictator. This hidden ancient bloodline completely flips the script on how the world views modern royalty, specifically Prince Albert of Monaco. Most people look at the ruling Grimaldi family and firmly assume their deep nobility provides the ancient foundation for the palace. The Grimaldis are a highly successful Genoese merchant noble house that seized Monaco through military fortune, with their absolute sovereignty dating from 1297 onward. Their origin story is one of bold action, taking a strategic rock by force and holding it tight for centuries. Yet the absolute oldest and deepest noble blood Prince Albert actually carries does not come from his father's Mediterranean dynasty at all. It comes directly through his mother, the famous Hollywood actress. Grace's German kin tie Albert directly to the Holy Roman Empire, with Protestant German ancestors and medieval Swabian nobility stretching far back to the 1300s and 1500s. Long before the Grimaldis ever solidified their martial grip on Monaco, Grace's ancestors were already meticulously documented in church records as serving castle lords and imperial ministers. When Albert stands before the cameras today, performing his royal duties, he represents two entirely different kinds of legitimacy at once. The public heavily focuses on the Grimaldi crest, but his veins carry the quiet, older inheritance of the von Stauffenberg and von Plieningen lines, an ancestry technically older than the very principality he rules. Despite this incredible, deeply documented depth of German nobility, stretching back 21 generations, Grace Kelly made a fiercely personal choice about which part of her past she actually wanted to touch, hold, and build upon. Her mother's side offered fascinating scholarly curiosities, but it critically lacked a living homestead or a recent immigrant story that she could physically visit and claim. Her father's side offered something entirely different and intensely real. John Peter Kelly was an Irish immigrant born in 1857 inside a tiny, two-room thatched cottage located in Drumurla, near Newport in County Mayo. He left that humble home and courageously crossed the ocean to Philadelphia around 1887 or 1888. He stepped into an unfamiliar American city and eventually built a massive, successful construction fortune through sheer will and heavy labor. That single massive leap across the Atlantic changed the trajectory of the entire family forever, paving the way for Grace's father to become an Olympic rower and a highly prominent figure in America. Grace did not just want to be an abstract, smiling symbol of Irish heritage for the cameras. She deeply wanted a real, tangible anchor. In 1961, having already become Princess Grace of Monaco and carrying all the heavy expectations of that role, she traveled back to the simple cottage in Drimoorla, accompanied by Prince Rainier. She did not just wave at the building from the comfort of a passing car for a quick photo opportunity. She walked inside, sat down, and shared tea with the owner, a woman named Ellen Mulcrone. Grace stepped directly into the living space of her family's origin, connecting with the story before she even owned it. 15 years later, Grace decided to make that powerful connection permanent. In 1976, she officially bought the modest Drimoorla cottage along with approximately 35 acres of surrounding land for a price falling between IR 7,500 and IR 7,800. She possessed the wealth to purchase a sprawling estate, absolutely anywhere in the world, a yacht or a beautiful painting, but she deliberately chose the specific dirt where her grandfather's story began. About 35 acres is a massive amount of ground, far more than a tiny yard, offering open fields and wide space. She intended to transform the working-class property into a private family retreat. By 1979, architectural plans were actively reviewed for a comfortable 2,000 square foot vacation home on the site. It was a massive statement of intention, proving she wanted a place large enough for family holidays and quiet mornings. Grace was a woman trying to build a quiet, secure future out of a humble past that could have easily been lost to time. She never got the chance to fully finish it. Grace died tragically in 1982, and the construction on her Irish sanctuary permanently halted. The land remains a partially unfinished anchor today, a poignant physical reminder of the exact heritage she valued most deeply. Grace Kelly's life sits squarely at a fascinating intersection of deeply competing histories. She carried an Irish grandfather who bravely left County Mayo for Philadelphia in the late 1880s, sparking an entirely new American dynasty. She carried a German-American grandfather from Berg bei Heilbronn, whose family surname Meyer quietly stood its ground against a world that constantly wanted to alter or correct it. She served as the glamorous face of Hollywood's Catholic Cinderella story, while her maternal bloodline stretched silently backward to Swabian knights. That same bloodline connected her tightly to the dark, heartbreaking resistance of Klaus von Stauffenberg against the Nazi regime and a family that miraculously survived Buchenwald. The world spent decades looking at a woman they thought they completely understood, staring at a beautiful movie star turned princess. Yet behind the perfect dresses and the royal titles, Grace Kelly was always carrying a vast, complicated past that reached far deeper and much darker than the cameras ever showed.